Hi, love. I'd like to welcome my first guest, Jonathan Watts. Jonathan?
Johnny's fine.
Johnny's fine, okay. Thank you so much for coming in.
Well, thank you for having me, Xander.
You've brought a couple of copies of your book.
I have.
It's fantastic. I had a little look this week.
Awesome.
The blurb says, experience the journey of a young heroine through a wilderness of murder and myth.
Yep.
What an interesting premise. What's the book about?
It's called Bury Me Where They Fall. It's about a soldier named Amiel, and she disobeys an order that she doesn't agree with, and as punishment, her superior officer sends her on a suicide mission into an uncharted forest. And it's all she knows is she needs to find and assassinate a mysterious warlord called Decius. They know nothing about him. And as she gets further and further into the forest and away from civilization, reality begins to lose its hold, myths begin to bleed into her world, and it becomes basically a fight for her faith and sanity, as well as her life.
Mm. What inspired you to write the book then? I think you've been writing this for quite a long time.
Yeah, I've been writing since I was 14, and I'm 30, and I'm 31 now. My first book, I finished it when I was 16, and you've got to start somewhere, but it wasn't publishable. It was very standard high fantasy. There were elves and magic jewels and whatnot. I came up with this idea when I was 24. I watched the film Apocalypse Now, and it really, the feverish, surreal vibe of it and the linear sailing up the river narrative. It's quite mythic. It goes back to older myths. So I thought to myself, I've always been very interested in ancient mythology from a very early age. I thought I would just mix the two ideas together. I wanted the feverish, surreal vibe of Apocalypse Now with the linear narrative mixed with the sort of dark, ritualistic imagery you see in especially Norse mythology and the ancient Greek mythology as well. You've got the structured narratives, the hero's journey, the labours of Heracles, things like that. So I decided to mix them together, and I went with that, and this is what we ended up with.
Wonderful. You mentioned there that you're inspired by films, obviously Apocalypse Now.
Yes.
You're also inspired by music.
Yes, yeah. So being about 24 when I came up with the idea, I started listening to... it marked a shift in my taste in music, so I went from listening to heavy metal and punk, which I still do, I've still got time for it, but I started listening to a lot more of what I'd call the dark end of indie, so like the Afghan Whigs, my favourite band, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, lots of Leonard Cohen.
Appropriate today.
Yeah.
Our album of the week is Leonard Cohen.
Absolutely, loving it as well. The National, the Twilight Singers, Mark Lanegan, Soul Savers, so things like that, and the album It's Not How Far You Fall, It's the Way You Land by Soul Savers really started to speak to me, and it brought together these disparate elements of quite a scary new idea I had at the time. I was like, this is different to anything I've ever done before. This is so weird, and I wanted to keep that surreal vibe of things maybe not happening like they're supposed to, maybe things not happening at all. The music I listen to, my book actually has an unofficial soundtrack which is on my Instagram that
wonderful.
Songs that sync up.
Out.
So there's lots of The Cure, Nick Cave, Soul Savers, Palace Brothers, that's Bonnie Prince Billy, lots of stuff like that. It's on my Instagram, as I say, Jonathan Watts author.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to play some Soul Savers in a moment.
Amazing.
Sort of thinking about authors.
Yeah.
Are there any particular authors that inspired you?
Yes, definitely. So the fantasy author David Gemmell, I've always been a big reader all the time. It was a lot of encyclopedias and books about animals as a kid, which are great, but not really known for their emotional resonance. So when I was on holiday, when I was 13, I picked up a copy of Ravenheart by David Gemmell, and I just absolutely loved it. It blew me away. I was getting adrenaline rushes when the characters were in danger, things like that, and I'd never had that before. So I got back from my holiday, and then a few months later, I'd had an idea knocking around in my head, and I thought, I should give that a try. And, 17 years later, here we are.
Here it is, yeah. You're also a copywriter.
Yes.
What sort of things do you copyright, as it were?
Anything. So I've done Jack White from the White Stripes.
Yeah.
I did his solo tour recently. I've done Comic-Con. I've also done, UPVC Windows, accountants, estate agents. It's basically anyone who pays for it.
So you must be exposed to quite a variety of writing
you've got
styles.
to put your different writing head on for each one.
just thinking about when you're writing the book, what is your process like? Do you have a particular place where you work? Do you have a particular time you work?
I recently invested in a £25 Argos desk that I work at, which has been invaluable. It's not quite a mahogany one with a quill and stuff, but then I'm left-handed. I couldn't write with a quill. So, yeah.
That would make the book somewhat more interesting if you'd written it all by quill.
Impossible to read.
Yes, true.
So
but very original.
Yeah, so it's not quite a mahogany desk yet, but it's been absolutely helpful because it's important just to have a space psychologically as well as physically. Like, this is where I write, so I do that. I get a lot of music on.
And you can only write there? Can you write on trains or whatever?
Oh, no, I don't think I can do that. No, I need, like, private, quiet space. So, well, I say quiet, I play a lot of loud music, so, loud, but on my terms.
Yeah. What sort of times of day then? I mean, I was interviewing an author, Alexander McCall Smith. You'll know him. He said he gets up at sort of 5 o'clock in the morning to write. Do you do the same?
I've done that with notes, not with actual writing. Like, when I wake up, the most pernicious idea anyone creative can have is I'll remember that later, because you won't. So when I wake up with a note, I make the note, like, regardless of where I'm at. But as far as writing goes, I tend to do it after work, so I get home and set myself up and try and get a good 3 hours in. So I'm writing the sequel to Bury Me at the minute, and so that's my routine. There is to play a lot of Nine Inch Nails at the minute, and 16 Horsepower, a dark country band.
Fantastic.
That's been really good.
Can you tell us anything about the book?
Follows straight on from the end of Bury Me.
Oh, is that? Okay.
Yeah, that's all I've got.
Okay, well, we should mention now, before I forget, that it's available. It's published by Arcbound. It's available on Amazon. You go to Arcbound's site, as it were.
Yeah, you can get it directly from their website. You can get it on Amazon. It is available in Waterstones and foils, but you'll have to go in and order it.
Pre-order.
You'll have to say, I want this, ordering in.
Fantastic. So, writing a novel, was it harder or easier than you expected?
The first one I did when I was 14, I wrote it with the utter brash confidence of a teenager that as soon as it was finished, I'd send it off and it'd get picked up. So that was quite easy, but maybe not realistic. This one I wrote when I was 24. I was a bit more realistic. And there's like lulls. There's bits that are more fun to write than others. There's a character called the Priest in this book that everyone responds to quite strongly. That was among the more fun bits to write. That's when I knew I had something very evocative. I certainly hoped so anyway. But then there's bits that aren't so fun. There's like the sort of almost admin-y bits between chapters, getting them from one event to another that aren't as fun. So that bit can be tough, and it can be tough to motivate yourself. But honestly, it's not fun all the time, but it's always worth doing.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to play some Soul Savers now. You mentioned them. It's a particular inspiration to you. Listen to lots of music, but this is one track, I believe, which was particularly important to you writing the book.
Yes, when I heard Revival, it kind of brought together all of the elements, and there's a line in it, trying to get my hands clean in dirty water, that kind of sums up the themes of Bury Me.
Fantastic. You very kindly signed my book, and you wrote in a quote from Leonard Cohen.
I did.
Which is, you want it darker, and I forget the rest.
We kill the flame.
We kill the flame. Fantastic. Well, here it is then. Soul Savers and Revival. Jonathan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See a revival, yeah. see a revival tonight, Lord. There needs to be a revival.
Soul Savers and Revival, the choice of my first guest today, Jonathan Watts. I'm joined by my second guest of the day, the cast of, and I need to get this right, Wherever the Human Heart Beats. Good morning, everyone. How are you?
Hello.
Good morning.
Great, we can all hear you all right. We've just posted a thing on Instagram saying we need some more mics, and we really do. There are 4 of you sharing one, and it's somewhat cozy in here at the moment. Who are you guys? I've only just met you. Go through your names and what you do.
Sweet. I'm Emma. I'm the writer-director of Wherever the Human Heart Beats.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm the producer.
I'm Alice. I'm one of the actors.
I'm Charlie. I'm another actor.
And there's also another actor called Holly who can't be here today. But there's only 3 people in the cast.
Okay,
so.
great. She didn't send a recorded message saying, "I'm sorry, I'm in LA."
Imagine.
What's your play about then?
So it's basically the kind of overarching theme of it is that it's about social mobility, but in a kind of more practical sense, it's about 3 people, Nina, Ben, and Kate, and the way that they kind of grow up and lose touch as they get older. So it's very much about like their kind of intimate, sort of nostalgic perceptions of the way that they grew up, and why life kind of separated them.
How did you go about writing the script then?
So it was initially the libretto of an opera, and then I started making it into a play, and we wrote a little bit of the ending around things that had come out of like characterization workshops and like dramaturgy and stuff. So the end result of the script is that it's kind of written around everyone that was cast, which is really nice. But initially it was just loads of little fragments from this kind of like original work that had music in it as well.
Do you keep the music in it? Is that gone?
Not the same music, no, but
Okay.
there's a lot of music in the show.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, Jonathan can relate to that. A lot of music in his books, as it were. What sort of music then in particular have you included?
A lot of it's kind of like folky, kind of electronic, acoustic kind of
It's
vibes.
been so acoustic for 3 weeks.
Yeah. So all of our kind of like rehearsal playlists and all of our warm-up songs have been the same sort of 10
same
songs
kind
on
of vibe.
repeat.
Yeah.
I got a bit of stick for that at the moment, but we sorted it out.
How would you describe your characters then? We've got some of the cast here.
Yeah.
Who are your characters and how would you describe them?
My character's called Kate, and I'd say she's like that reliable, homely friend that we all have. She's
Okay.
always there for everyone. She's comforting. And she's a home bird, yeah.
She's always very positive.
Yeah, very positive, optimistic, sunny.
Fantastic.
So I'm playing Ben. Ben kind of hides behind this kind of sort of faux sort of cynicism, old grumpy man kind of shtick to kind of give him some kind of like grit and street credibility. But he is a softie. He's really, really great fun to play, and he is sort of has so much life and vigor to him, and I think has real sort of lightness. But then as you kind of get through the play, you kind of start to see a bit more of his flaws, and he is very comfortable in the environment he lives in, this kind of like small sort of kind of like northern-ish town, but he doesn't really kind of have like the drive and ambition to really sort of go out there and do something really great with his life, and I think that kind of results in some tensions with the characters, but he is a good egg.
Good. Whereabouts is it set exactly?
We've not specified.
Yeah,
Not
there's not an exact
unspecified.
location.
Northern location.
Northern
Midlands
side
location.
We base it around accents quite a lot because
Yeah.
both these guys have like Midlands sort of northern accents.
Yeah.
Slightly northern, but not full northern.
Yeah. It's not like a specific place, but it's just kind of that world of like when you're really young and like in your town you have like those secret places that kind of like resonate with you while you're growing up, like that kind of thing.
Yeah. What was the rehearsal process like then? Did you all get on? That's the first question.
We hate each other.
Yeah. Can see you trying to punch each other right now. Get off the mic.
No, it's been really lovely.
It really has.
We started like a few weeks ago, and obviously the nature of this, that it's been such a small, intimate like team and cast. We've had loads of really interesting and important discussions about like the nature of class division, social mobility, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was such a sort of rare kind of rehearsal process. Not really experienced anything like it. In that, like it was great because Emma is like an actor's director and writer, and I've just felt really, really sort of catered for our ideas. all of our contributions were listened to, and they were all really integral to making to the characters. So I think before we even started blocking, we kind of just sort of sat down and we talked about that in a bit of the direction, built up an image of the town. And so I think considering we've had about 3 weeks to rehearse it and put it all together, we already had this really strong sense of character and place and world. I think it was quite easy sort of moving forward from then.
So the sort of initial research was very important. The initial discussions were very important to the direction of where you went from there. What was when you'd sort of come up with the idea and you'd researched into that, was it a very collaborative project afterwards in rehearsals? I mean, obviously you have a director and a producer, but did you all feed in ideas?
Yeah, I think so. I think so I'd say about 2/3 of the play was written before we started rehearsing. And then the sort of last third of it we wrote during the process based on like the things that you guys had suggested about your characters and like the ideas that you had. And I think that was really important because that kind of part of the play was about like how they sort of grew distant. And I think the fact that we all kind of had a bit of an input into that is really nice.
Yeah,
it was crazy, just sort of like 1 week in, and then suddenly Emma just whacks out this like final scene, like, this is how it ends. We're just like, okay, cool. And then it's the kind of like culmination of all the sort of the themes and the relationships, and where it puts everyone into their final kind of positions of the play, and it's really emotive. It's really powerful. I think it's going to really, really hit home.
Johnny, when you were writing your book, did people come up with ideas and give them to you? Did they know you were writing a book?
They attempt to.
And did you say no to all of them?
No, people don't really do that. I mean, obviously, with the publisher, the editor went through my book and made a lot of changes, but those all made total sense and improved it. That's the entire point of editing, so I'm not a prima donna or anything. I was
and
like,
as a copywriter, you probably understand that anyway.
So they were like, do you mind if we change it to this? And I was like, yeah, awesome, that's better. So I was always fine with it.
Yeah, writing books, it seems like quite a sort of solo project, quite a lonely project, whereas doing a play...
Much more collaborative.
Yeah, but I wonder if sometimes that's a misconception.
I think this has been quite unique in terms of a lot of drama going on at the Univer in terms of how collaborative. I mean, I know the cast, you guys have commented on that, how it's more collaborative than normal. How normally you'll be given a script and you'll learn the lines, whereas this is much more
involved.
Much more involved. Yeah.
I think traditionally as well, sort of like in like the normal process of like writing plays, directors and actors have to sort of work to fit around a script. Whereas this has been really nice, obviously, because like I wrote it and I'm in the room. We can like work together to kind of make the script fit everyone else that's working on the play, right? So like I guess it depends like the nature of the project. But yeah, I think it's very different to novel writing.
I did actually think of a good example of what you asked while, it occurred to me the second I stopped speaking. So my dad came up with a brilliant one, so thanks, Dave. Really appreciate it. Basically, I had a character dashing forward at one point. Someone dashed forward, and Dad said, that's a weak word, he needs a better word. So I think I replaced it with surged, and I was like, no, you are totally right. So yeah, people have come up with things having read the book, and honestly, I'm willing to take it on board if it's an improvement. I'm not particular. Unlike, when I was a teenage author and I came up with a 150,000 word novel, most of which were adverbs or adjectives, I'm not going to lie, and I thought it was high art that needed no improvement whatsoever. And that's not the one that got published, unsurprisingly.
Wonderful. Well, lots of people getting in touch. So we have Guy here, he says, enjoying your interview with the cast of Wherever the Human Heart Beats. He's got tickets for the show, really looking forward to it. And then
That's nice.
So you'll see Guy there. Got one person in the audience at least.
Yeah, we got one ticket, it's great.
Good. And then a question here, where was it? It was, here we are. Yes, this is for Johnny. He says, hi Xander, enjoying the show. Could you ask Johnny on my behalf, what's the biggest distraction when he's writing?
That's a good question. Probably like the social life side of things. I'm really sociable and I have absolutely fantastic friends. Rory, Mike, Stan and Daniel. Another shout out.
Another shout out.
And so I want to go out and, be a normal person, but I also need to get a book that I want to be about 80,000 words written. So there is a rub between like the social side of things and getting it done. But ultimately, it's entirely possible to find time for both, so it has been fine. But yeah, like distractions wise, I'd say probably that, or reading other stuff. Because I'm a massive reader.
But does surely reading other stuff helps when you're in the process of writing?
It does help to read around the genre, so I hadn't read enough fantasy really, other than David Gemmell and a bit of Raymond D. Feist, so I read around the genre and it was more typical, whereas mine's, I don't want to call other stuff typical, but it was older, so things like The Belgariad by David Eddings, and this very interesting series called The Dagger and the Coin that was about banking in the middle of a war in a fantasy world, and it is so much more interesting than I just made it sound. And
it doesn't sound great in that description, does it? A banking saga.
I'm so sorry, Daniel Abrahams, I've sold you short.
Wolf of Wall Street medieval style.
That is much better. Maybe you should be the copywriter.
I'm busy at the moment. We'll see.
That was a really nice rejection.
Yeah. Guys, your pot of Spotlights. What are the future plans for Spotlights?
El Presidente.
So basically the direction that Spotlights is going in this year is that we want to program as much student writing as possible.
Fantastic.
Last year it was kind of a combination of like established contemporary writers and then also like a little bit of student work, a little bit of devised work. Whereas this year I think we need to empower students, we need to give them a platform to put their work on.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think once you provide a platform for people and you say like we want to fill this space with your voices, like people do, and this term like everything's been written by a student.
Haven't we?
Yeah,
really
it's been a good term. So more
Good.
of that.
More of that to
More
come.
of that, please.
Fantastic. So, Wherever the Human Heart Beats, once again, is on at the Alma Theatre and Tavern in Clifton this Monday and Wednesday, 8 p.m. Tuesday, yes. Running time of 50 minutes. Guys, thank you so much for telling me about it. And thank you, Jonathan, for telling me all about your book.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Xander. It's been really fun.
That's a pleasure. This is your first radio appearance.
It is, yeah.
I'm honoured.
But it's been great.
Good. Well, plenty more to come, hopefully. I should say that Jonathan's book is published by Arcbound. It's available to buy online. And next week, we have another literary guest, actually. I'll be speaking over the line in Stockholm to Swedish-American author John Cluett, who's coming to Bristol very soon to discuss his projects. Guys, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.